All right. We're going to assume that we're recording now and life is moving forward on this. We will unmute everybody, see if that makes a difference. We will shrink this thing down. All right, what I want to do tonight, and I guess I better leave this open a little bit just in case someone decides to put something in the chat box. I know Phil and Wayne, you probably both found the chat box down here, so I will just leave that open. If you find the chat box works better for you than the microphones, that's fine. What I want to do tonight basically is just walk through the group project or the team project, depending on what we call it. I will post this thing up on YouTube when we're done with it so that the other 20 people in class can see it. But I found when teaching this thing, I get a lot of questions about this team project. So what I want to do is spend some time, walk through this real quickly, I guess, just to make sure that I cover everything that needs to be covered. The first thing I should probably say for the people that are watching this on the archive, the group project is not my idea. I will get someone every quarter who at the end of the quarter is going to be all ticked off at me because I made them do a group project. No, I didn't make you do that. This is the school develops these classes, not me. They create these online shells, not me. No matter which section of B-233 you were in, you would end up with the same team project. I get people that say, well, can't I do, isn't there an alternative? There isn't for this one. Some classes have alternative assignments, but for this one, people are just stuck doing a team assignment. So, you know, I think it's a good assignment, to be honest with you. I really like the team assignment because people at the end have really developed good ways to communicate with each other virtually, which I think is a skill you're going to need down the road. But for the interim, we're just going to go forward on this. I will try to go slowly enough that people watching this on the archive can figure out what I'm doing. You can see I'm just in your shell. For those of you who are surprised to see this page, I guess I should point out this is the announcements. You can click on course. This is where the announcements show up. You can scroll up and down on these. If you don't see the announcements you want, you can click on past. It'll bring up old announcements, but we're not really going to spend much time there. What we're going to spend our time on is we're going to go to lessons. And most people, I think, have found this during the individual project, but there's going to be one or two people that are watching this archive and go, oh my God, I didn't know that was there. Once you're at lessons, scroll all the way down to the bottom until you find the area that says course materials. Click on that. Okay. Let me pause here just to make sure we're in good shape. Wayne or Phil or either one of you or both, is this coming through on your screen? Are you seeing my my desktop? Okay. In that case, we will just keep going. So I want to make sure that that's coming up. Here. All right. Let me shift this back. I'm going to click on the thing that says Team Project Part 1. This project is different. I had some people a few weeks back that were pretty sure they already knew what this project was. This project is not the same as the individual project. The individual project was about teaching people about ethics and corporate social responsibility, CSR. This project is completely different. You really are going to go out and assess how management practices have changed over time. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to pick a company, you'll see in week 1, you're going to pick a company and look at how its management has changed over time. How did they go about doing planning 20, 30 years ago? How do they do it now? How were they organized? What was their leadership like? What kind of controls did they have in place? Okay. This is the overarching purpose of this project, is showing me how management practices at a specific company have changed over time. And you notice down here, the team research project part 1, select an organization that has been in business for at least 20 years. So week 7, which starts, arguably this week Friday, but, Sunday for sure. Week 7 in the team forums, all the team leaders are going to go out there and tell their forum, here's what we need to do. We need to come up with a business that's a company that's been in business for at least 20 years. And what I will tell you is if you find one that's been in business longer that's had some management changeover, that will make this project easier, because the whole goal of the project is to show how management has evolved, how it's changed. Now, sometimes management hasn't evolved. Sometimes it's devolved. There are companies that are worse off today than they were 20, 30 years ago. That's fine, too. The beauty of that is that works for this paper, because what we're looking at is how management practices have changed. Not necessarily improved, but how they have changed. I can think of 1 or 2 companies off the top of my head that are probably going through significant management changes right now, one of which is probably Apple, since, the entire guru of that company is gone. Okay? So let me back up here again. I guess Wayne and Phil, does the project itself make sense to you guys? If it makes sense to you, I will assume that it'll make sense to people, that are going to look at this archive. If it's not making sense to those of you that are live, it sure isn't going to make any sense to an archive. So, all right. All right. Yep. All right. Well, that's good, because I never know what these archives look like until I've done building them. So week 1 or week 7, which is part 1 of the project, pick that company. Find one that's been in business a long time. Find one that's had some management change. And keep in mind, what you're going to be looking for are how management practices have changed in planning, organizing, leading, and control, the 4 basic parts of management. Okay? So that's part 1. We'll go back here. We'll just click back. We're still in course materials, team project part 2. And the beauty of this, by the way, for Wayne and Phil and anyone watching this, once you're in course materials, you can see the whole project for the rest of the quarter. These don't just open up 1 week at a time. They're here the whole quarter, so you'll have a feel for what's coming up. In week 8, which is part 2, very, very similar to the last project. Everyone in the group, not just the group in total, everyone in the group needs to come up with basically 6 quality sources. Now, you probably remember this from the other project. This was that annotated bibliography. Everyone that's on your team should have done an annotated bibliography for their first project, so they should know the drill. They know it's not to just send in 6 websites. They have to go through and, provide an annotation. What's it about? Does it have credibility? Is it of a good quality, and that sort of thing? But here's the trick to part 2 that people seem to miss. Everyone in the group prepared 6 annotated bibliographies. Then the group gets together later in a week, culls out the duplicates, throws out the ones that they say maybe this isn't going to be much help, and ultimately turns in 1 annotated bibliography for the team. You will have at least 6 sources on that annotated bibliography, but some of the teams have 4 or 5 members, active members. They may end up with an annotated bibliography of 20 sources if they find they really like them. That's fine. You can't have less than 6, but you do have to have at least 6. You can have way more than that. So every person in the group is going to do their own annotated bibliography, turn it into the group, and then the group will go through and decide what they want to submit. I should probably stop here and point out the fact I think the team leaders have maybe gotten the gist of this, but people that are not team leaders may not have. When we're in the team project, there will only be one item submitted per week per team. Okay? So if you're on a team but not the team leader, you will submit your stuff to the team leader or to your team discussion forum, whatever your team has decided. I've got one team that's doing everything via Skype, another one I think that's using, what's the new Google one now, SkyDrive or whatever, but that's where they're putting everything. That's fine. I don't care where it goes. But in the end, I only want one submission per team each week, and the team leaders are going to be responsible for making sure that only the names of the people who actively participated that week show up on that submission. So if you're a team leader and you've got 5 people in your team, but only 3 of you work on annotated bibliographies, make sure that only those 3 names end up in your submission. No one, I mean, the beauty of this is no one gets a free ride just because they're on a team, and Tom doesn't have to decide who was active and who wasn't. Tom has team leaders to do that, and we tried something new this quarter and got team leaders in place early on, so that should work a little better. So let me stop again after part 2. Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate that. Wayne, what I have to tell you is, while it sounds fair, it's always a crapshoot in this class as to how it works out. What I can guarantee you is before the end of the quarter, I will have received at least one death threat because people just hate this team project. But on the other hand, what I can also tell you is by the end of the team project, there's going to be a boatload of people that say, oh my God, this is one of the best things I ever did, because they will have learned how to work on a virtual team, which is a huge skill for a lot of people. We just don't do business face-to-face as much as we used to. So can we move forward, I guess? I'm not seeing. If you have any questions, throw them in that chat box, I guess. Nothing? All right. Just keep rolling, realizing that we're all missing fabulous election coverage tonight. I can hardly wait for non-stop election coverage. That was part 2. Part 3 of the team project, which should be due in week 9. Part 3 takes the place of the interview. If you remember, on the individual project, we had an interview. For part 3, we're now just calling it primary data. Primary data. It might end up being an interview. It might end up being an interview that someone gave to the press. But primary data means something that someone directly involved in the management of that company came up with. So what I'm not looking for is a Wall Street Journal article that talks about the company, but the reporter didn't interview anyone at the company. What I'm looking for are articles that's essentially insider information, I guess, is the easiest way to talk about it. Because again, we're looking at how this company is managed. As it says every week in here, the planning, the organizing, the leading, the control. These are things that your insiders are going to know about. They're going to publish reports. You might find, I have to tell you, a really good source of primary data is an SEC report. SEC reports, especially 10Ks, those are put together by the companies themselves. The CEOs have to sign off on them. The controllers have to sign off on them. Tons of good primary data, not just the numbers, but all the management discussion and analysis and which way they're headed. You could look, if you've got a company that's been publicly traded for a lot of years, you can get SEC 10Ks going back 10, 20, 30 years. You could look at one from 30 years ago, then look at one from 20 years ago, then look at one from 10 years ago, and see how their philosophy of managing their business has changed. Okay, so that's really, primary data, things that are coming from the company. Now on this one, not everyone in the group is responsible for coming up with their own primary data, but my suggestion is going to be to any of the group leaders that ask me about this, I would certainly have everyone out there looking for them, throwing ideas into the team forum or wherever they're going to put them, because you can't just have one person looking for this. Someone maybe is going to hunt down SEC reports, someone else might look through journals, someone else might look through press releases that the company has issued to see what kinds of primary data they can find. So again, I think that the team leaders will probably find that they will divvy up duties on this thing as it goes along. Questions on this part? Are we still doing good? Is it still making sense? Is it even still coming through? All right. All right. Well, you guys are easy. I like this. When I do this in my Foundations of Math class, I always get lots of questions like, well, how big is the number 2? So, 2 is bigger than 1, but smaller than 3. All right, so where are we at? That was part 3. Part 4, this is going to come as a great shock. If I had the video on, I could do my, E-Trade baby shock face for you. Part 4 is prepare a rough draft. However, keeping in mind you're only going to get one rough draft per team, there really isn't any peer review on the rough draft other than the fact that your team will review its own rough draft. Now what this means for me as the instructor is by the time the end of part 4 rolls around, which is week 10, by the time the end of week 10 rolls around and each team submits its rough draft, these rough drafts are in pretty good shape, because you've already had everyone on your team go through the drafts. You probably, and here again, what I find from experience is that most teams will have at least one person on them who's really good at APA. In-text citations and reference pages and cover sheets, and that person almost always will be the one that will volunteer to go through and type it up in APA format. Other people are really good at research or writing, but they're terrible at APA. They can write wonderful papers, but they just can't get it in APA format. And so, I would imagine by the time we get here, the team leaders will have figured out who it is on their team that's really good at APA, who really likes to write, who likes to do research. And by now, since we're week 10, the team leaders have also figured out who the people are in the team who really aren't participating, and they won't have any trouble not putting their names on the cover sheet that comes in with the assignment. And of course, that means, and this I know will be completely stunner for you, the last part, part 5 of the project, is of course the final project in final form, blah, 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 specific company, management practices changing over time, planning, organizing, leading, controlling, final version. Of course, part 5 is week 11. Most of you are familiar enough now with the Rasmussen online classes to know that week 11 actually ends on a Friday. I want to say it's like December 14 or 15. Hang on a minute. Let me look at the calendar. December 14 looks like it will be the end of the quarter. And so I need to warn you, there will probably be at least one person who's watching this that says, well, I can only do my team stuff on Saturdays. That's not going to work for the team project. You're going to have to be able to get in and out of your online class a couple times a week. And certainly in week 11, if you wait till Saturday, the ship will have sailed without you in week 11. So just a heads up to everyone listening to this as an archive. Yeah, week 11 always ends Friday at midnight. Let's see. So we've walked through the project. I think we've walked through the team part and the team leading part pretty well. Let's see. Wayne, I know you are a team leader, if I recall right. Let me look at my little sheet here. Wayne is leading team 3. And Phil, you are in team 2. And who's the leader of that? Oh, Sarah Jordan is the leader of that. But Phil, my gut instinct is that you will probably end up taking on a co-leadership role. Yes. Thank you, Phil. I was afraid someone would be afraid to ask that question. What if our leader sucks? You know, it's an interesting question to ask on an election night, Phil, but I'm not allowed to discuss politics here, so we won't do that. That's a giant LOL, by the way. What if our leader sucks? The sooner you let me know, the better. Wayne, let me come back to yours in a minute. Phil, I had an experience last quarter where about 2 weeks, 3 weeks into this, the leader just went off on her own and did her own thing and just cut everybody out. But it wasn't until week 11 that anyone else in the group let me know about it, and so then it gets a little late. All of the people that are leaders said they wanted to be leaders, so we have that part out of the way. But I do have, let me tell you what we have here ultimately. I have one team with 5 active people in it. I'm sorry, 2 teams. Yeah, one team with 5 active people. And actually, Phil, that's yours. Yours was the one team that everyone turned in something on the individual project. I have another team, two other teams that have 4 active people, one team with only 3 active people, and I actually have one team with only 2 active people, and I've already asked them if they wanted me to, and I've already asked them if they wanted me to split them up, and they've said no, so we're going to let them go, and Wayne, actually, you ended up with a 4th active one. Miss Garcia, you probably just didn't notice it because she put all her stuff in Monday this week after it was due, basically. But she'd had, I forgot what she told me, she had a medical issue, if I recall right. So, but you actually, as close as I can tell, including yourself, should now have 4 active people in your group. As far as switching leaders, my suggestion would maybe be if people, and I can try to remember to throw this out there, but teams might want to look at having a co-leader. Phil, I know you at one point in time were considering being a team leader. You might want to contact your team leader and ask her if she would like a co-leader. Wayne, you might want to look out at your group and see if someone else wants to do that. You know, you never know what happens. People have car accidents. People suddenly get sick. People end up with job things that get in the way. So I think the more people that are actively involved, probably the better. Through about the end of week 7, if I have to, I can always switch teams around or condense them. But as you would guess, once people start getting into week 8, where they're all doing the in-depth research in the annotated bibliographies, then you really don't want to switch. Why don't you join our team, Wayne? You know, Wayne, you want to quit being a team leader and jump over to Phil's team? Yeah, me too. It would not have been a horrible idea, but actually, I'll tell you what, Phil should probably stay put. Phil, I think you're the only guy on an all-girl team, aren't you? Yeah. Why would you ever want to switch that? Careful, this will be in the archive. Yeah. So, Anyway, actually, your team, all the teams, I've been real surprised. Even the team with only 2 active members said they wanted to stay because they said that they had talked to all of their members and they were ready to go. So I'm very, very hopeful this time that by getting leaders in place early and getting them out there, I lost a lot of time a couple quarters ago using the first week to pick team leaders, and I think having that out of the way, we should be able to hit the ground running. So let me say this, we're getting up to about 30 minutes on this thing, which means the video will be kind of long enough for everyone to watch. Any other questions, Phil or Wayne, that you'd like to know? Anything else you would like to see in the course? All right. Well, in that case, I'm doing so well, Phil, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. I am going to shut this thing down. Hold on a minute. Let me hit stop recording.